Welcome to Remainders, the podcast dedicated to exploring the wonder and joy that is the movies. The old, the new, the remembered, and the forgotten. Joining me is our co-host who is currently binging every Texas Chainsaw Massacre film in order, Patrick McIntyre. Great to be back with you, Pat, on yet another very, very warm day here in Los Angeles. I'm happy to announce that since we last spoke, I have survived the double feature of a hurricane and an earthquake. So how have things been going for you?
Besides a nice little heat wave here in Chicago, 48 hours of insane heat, it's been pretty chill. Yeah, nothing as extreme as your LA shenanigans. So I'm grateful that you're safe and okay, but also that I didn't have to deal with it. So.
Well, how apropos that we're covering a film today called The Big Heat. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to go ahead and go into a little synopsis for everybody so that they know what we're diving into. And I'm pretty excited to talk about it.
Oh, man, I'm so happy that you chose this because this was a blind spot for me. I had never seen this movie before. I was well aware of its notoriety in old school Hollywood. And I'm happy we can keep this Glenn Ford train going because he's definitely become one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too. So things are changing in this country, Vince. A man who can't see that hasn't got eyes. Never get the people steamed up. They start doing things. Grand juries, election investigations, deportation proceedings. That's one of my favorite lines ever from a movie. And I mean, seriously, let's see AI write that shit. You know what I mean? So The Big Heat from 1953, a film noir masterpiece of the highest caliber from a director who did it all, Fritz Lang. We previously discussed Lang's filmography and career when we covered Metropolis and M. So if you're out there and you missed those episodes, they're both available to listen and view in our back catalog. The Big Heat stars a recently discussed actor, Glenn Ford, as Patrick just mentioned. We just saw him in Gilda. We covered Gilda, which was a great film, also starring Rita Hayworth. But this film introduces Gloria Grahame. And we haven't talked about her much on this podcast. She is my personal favorite femme fatale. This film also gives us one of the most, I feel, underappreciated bad guy roles in cinema history in Vince Stone, a great foil to Glenn Ford's Dave Bannion, performed with ease and sleaze by Lee Marvin. The Big Heat has all the classic film noir stuff we love. Dirty cops, a hard-boiled lead punching his way through his vendetta, a crime syndicate dancing with the police department, and the beautiful blonde with the quick wit, keen fashion, charm, and of course, a purse exploding with cigarettes. The story follows Dave Bannion, a homicide detective played by Glenn Ford, as the hard-boiled cop with a soft side at home. His perfect home life gets turned upside down as he maneuvers through crooked cops and an overwhelmingly long list of crime bosses and hooligans to try and discover some answers behind the recent suicide of a fellow officer. With a will that won't let up, Bannion finds himself immersed in trouble from every angle, but that only fuels his fire. So, Patrick, I really hope you don't have any hot coffee close by, because let's face it, this one is a scalding hot film noir.
Well, thank you for that killer fucking intro for this movie. You're definitely setting everybody up. If I hadn't seen this at this point, I would be rushing to go see it right now.
That's the hope, right?
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. So a lot to get into. But yes, first, so I loved it. And there's one major reason that I'll get into after maybe you discuss a little bit like what your experience with this movie was, but this definitely was unlike a lot of the older Hollywood noirs that I've watched in the past, and I just want to know.
How so?
It feels like a hangout movie, and that's precise. It's one of my favorite vibes a movie can give. You know, when it's more about the characters rather than a specific plot that you're trying to figure out. I mean, this movie is a little plotty, but it's way more focused on the characters and getting to know the characters. I mean, in the first 10 or 15 minutes, you basically know who's the good guy and at least who's shady. Like, you basically know who the bad guys are, and some people may be kind of on the fence, but Bannion is legit largely because of the scenes with his wife and his family, and everybody else is pretty much set up as the bad guy. So there's not really a lot of surprise turns But once that's is set up, it's like an hour and a half of literally just hanging out with these characters and Bannion doing his stuff. And even though it's Ebert has a good take on this that we can get into later, but he's doing what he thinks is right. And it's all the characters, and they're so unique. They're so well fleshed out, especially Debbie, played by Gloria Grahame. So just hanging out with these characters for an hour and a half was absolutely delightful. Like, again, it's a movie I guarantee I'll watch more than a lot of other older movies that are just more focused on the plot, because these characters I know, like, I would like to revisit again and again.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, as you say, I don't know, an actress like Gloria Grahame doesn't really get I mean, she does at the beginning just so you can kind of see her, but her like role is pretty big in this film. However, you don't really get her involved until like, I would say like the last fourth of the movie. And that's she played as dumb at the beginning. This is like just kind of like the dumb floozy. Like, I had no idea that she was going to become like the major player in the movie. So, but that's what the great thing is about so many femme fatales in these film noirs. You let your guard down with them at any point, and they're going to come back and bite you. You know what I mean? And that's like such a great. That's like one of the best things about film noirs to me is like these really. Don't underestimate female character leads. Yeah. And I mean, the character is like way more sympathetic of a femme fatale than like most others, I would say. Because I mean, it's like, unless I was totally missing something, she didn't do anything that was like overtly duplicitous or heinous. I mean, she does, commit murder at the end, but, and maybe you can flesh out the details of the implications of that one, but her character again is like somebody who wants to do good. Like, and that's an interesting difference. You're right. That's a good point, because most femme fatales, you're not seeing any kind of good side of them at all, and that's the difference here in the Gloria Grahame character. But she also, there's a movie, and I brought this up last time when we were talking about her. And I still can't remember the name, but I saw it when Criterion did their Fox Noir kind of, I don't know, there was like 10 movies in there or something. And one of them was a movie with Glenn Ford. Again, I would love to cover on this. I forget the film's name, but anyway, she is totally diabolical in that film and so kick-ass. And it's probably my favorite performance of hers. I only had seen that film once. With this film, this is I think my third time seeing it. So the first time I saw it on TCM, where they had done they had this segment called Noir Alley, hosted by a guy named Eddie Muller. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Yeah. But so I saw it there first. I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And then in 2020, I watched this again. And I'm telling you, it's so crazy to see when you watch these films, like, you're watching a movie from 1953, and then you get to see where's the world now, and in 2020, I'm like literally out my back window. I'm watching people riot on the streets. There's cop corruption. There's all these different things that are the same themes that are in this film playing out in the world. And that's why I started my synopsis with that quote. It's like, I saw that quote in 2020. I thought, like, this is exactly it. People get pissed off and they rise to the top. Yeah. And that is a recurring theme in the movie. I mean, it's Bannion is the driving force he keeps on going into the investigation against everybody's word. Each time he goes in a little bit further, he plays with fire just a little bit more, and it keeps on bubbling to the top. And that's kind of what I was mentioning. Like, Ebert had a good take on this, is that he, does he ever take responsibility for his actions truly, and the results of it? So this is the quote that he says: "Does it ever occur to Bannion that he is at least partly responsible for the deaths of the women? No, apparently it does not matter, and that's one reason why the film is so insidiously chilling. He continues on his mission, oblivious to its cost. Oh, he's right, of course, that Lagana and Stone are vermin, but tell that to the women he obliviously sends into harm's way." And so it's he gets into Fritz Lang's as he calls it, moral ambidexterity. Lang tells a story of a heroic cop while using it to mask another much darker, more sinister story, which is that of whether or not Bannion's actually taking responsibilities for his actions and the death that it causes. I recently watched The Untouchables, for like the 80th time.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, my girlfriend had not seen it, so it was awesome to watch it with her. But
those beginning notes with the score, I mean, you just know you're in good hands within the first 5 seconds
and
of that movie.
Like the title sequence, we can go on. We got to cover that, of course.
Right.
But there's a similar theme, sort of, with the Elliot Ness character. Like, he knows when he enters this world, his family's going to be at risk, so he sends them away and everything. And it's a big cost. So that's kind of an interesting review from Ebert, because in this film, you don't see that Dave Bannion character really understanding fully the implications of him continuing to push on in the face of all of these people who are like, hey, you better be careful. They're constantly warning him. And, he's so, that's what I mean about hard boiled. That's like, you can't get through that shit. It's not runny. And the issue of what happened, I mean, this is going to be a spoiler again. Sorry for anybody who hasn't seen this movie from 1953, but we want to just let you know we're going to have spoilers here.
It's fucking 75 years old. We could do spoilers. Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, this is such a big key moment, and it's shocking even for sometimes movies from 1953 or something like that. You're not. Sometimes they're not set up the way that new modern movies are for you to really feel it the same way. It's
not at all. Yeah, that's why it's sometimes hard for me to connect with some old movies.
Yeah, 100%. But Fritz Lang directing this, of course, too, helps. But anyway, the way that Dave Bannion's wife finally, they're setting it up so amazing, where they're having the steak dinner together, and they really truly have this like little daughter. They're very much in love, and they're pretty much like newlyweds. They've got their first house. It looks like he comes home and he only drinks like a little bit of drink, but then she'll drink a little bit of it, and then she'll smoke his cigarette. It's kind of like, these little moments matter, because as soon as she goes out into the car and she decides she's going to leave and she'll be right back, but of course she's never coming back. That explosion, it like sends shockwaves through your body as soon as you realize they fucking killed her. Like, you're not really expecting that in this film, like, will that it's really going to happen? And of course, that's the powder keg that sets off Dave Bannion even more as we go through the movie.
Were they trying to get him or her?
Him.
I believe we're trying to get him. They wasn't like a message, like sending it to his, harm his wife. They were actually trying to get him, and they were just fucked it up.
I think it's up to the viewer. I mean, honestly, I think it doesn't really matter, right? Like, at the same time, you think about the scene in Casino, right? Like, that was for sure they wanted to get De Niro,
Yeah.
But that was pretty obvious that De Niro had to go in that film. And here, I don't think it's necessarily matters. It's like, these guys are criminals and they just want to send a message. So whether it's him who dies, which ends their trouble, or it's his wife, they think that's going to stop Dave Bannion either way. And of course, when the wife dies, it only, like you said, stoked the flames even more for him.
Yeah. Short tangent. The best Barbie meme I saw when everybody was dressing up pink to go see Barbie was De Niro's salmon suit that he's wearing in that scene. I think that's the one he's wearing when he gets in the car. It's like this pink salmon suit that looks awesome, but it's just the perfect, like, on my way to go see Barbie in this suit.
Nobody dressed better than De Niro in that fucking movie.
Oh,
man.
My dude, the amount of suits that he wears that are impeccable in that. I mean, that's half of a character right there. So
totally.
Okay, yeah, back to Bannion. So that's the thing. It's like, that's what, like, Ebert was pointing out. It's like, he's not really, at least you're not really seeing him grapple with him being culpable, without everybody, all the women around him being in harm's way. And that's the thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that actually I didn't think about. I should have read the Ebert review. Because he's obviously, his dedication to not stopping is causing problems for everybody else in his orbit, and that's the point. What do you think? I like
that the idea that the big bads, they didn't get it right, that they were trying to get him, they fucked it up and got her. And again, that just adds to the depth of these characters. Like I said, like, it's pretty set up, like, who's good, who's bad in this movie at first, and you have that moral ambiguity, like I mentioned. But, like, again, it's like, it is way more of a hangout movie than anything pre 1970s, because it's so much about just giving depth to all the characters, including the bad guys. And that's what I love about it, because they have so many small nuanced scenes where it's like it would seem like throwaway dialogue, but that's precisely what a hangout movie is. It's just literally spending time with the characters because they're characters you want to watch, regardless of what the plot is happening.
Yeah, and I mean, the crux of it is like, what happens when a character doesn't stop? What's going to happen, to all the rest of the people, like we just talked about, in his orbit and to him. Yeah. And that's interesting enough for us to continue watching, because, you did set up the character really well at the beginning with his home life. Even the choice to show that empty house as he moves out, after he's told to give his gun, you're off the police force, we warned you. He goes in there and realizes everybody is in on this whole thing with the crime syndicate, and he's like, I'm done with being a cop. I'm going on my own. I'm going rogue. And he's in his house empty, where there used to be all these beautiful memories. And as soon as they show that scene, I'm like, oh fuck, like here we go. Yeah.
It's Brando's wife, or Brando's sister, is the actress that plays his wife.
I saw the last name of Brando. I didn't realize that was his sister. Is it Jocelyn or something?
Jocelyn Brando. Yeah, that's Marlon Brando's sister, the actress, plays Bannion's wife. So she had she looked so familiar. I don't know if I had seen her and stuff. Yeah. She was in Mommy Dearest in '81, but nothing that I was really recognizing. But she just had a recognizable face. Oh shit! Wait a minute. No, I'm looking at her IMDb right now. She's in Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, which is an awesome TV movie, a horror film about a killer scarecrow. It's actually on Shudder right now. So
I'm going to have to watch that.
Yeah, Joe Bob, The Last Drive-In actually just covered this one. So, but that was in '81, so that's probably why I didn't recognize her. But maybe she looked familiar because of that. So, but yeah, Brando's sister. So.
Very cool. Good. Yeah, I did not know that. There's a little movie trivia for you out there. Brando's sister is in this film. And I mean, this film introduces us to a lot of characters. Like you said, it's a hangout movie. I like that. I didn't really think of that either, but you get to hang out with a lot of interesting characters. So what did you think of the character that Lee Marvin played?
Okay, so yeah, that's the thing. It's like I remember seeing his name before watching the movie, and not realizing Stone was Lee Marvin. Once I realized he was, because I'd only seen him in like Dirty Dozen, I think, and I'm not even sure like what else. Like,
I mean, he's pretty young in this film.
Yeah, that's the thing. I didn't quite recognize him because of that. I mean, I've never seen Cat Ballou. I know that's one of his more popular ones. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, Lee Marvin I really mostly just know him from the throwaway line from Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs. When after he's fighting Mr. White, and they settle down, he's like, I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan. So
yeah.
For me, that's always just been the touchstone of like, well, Lee Marvin is some badass.
A tough guy, yeah.
Tough guy from the 40s and 50s that I haven't really seen much of him. But I had seen Dirty Dozen. He's fucking terrifying in this fucking movie. Like, it makes sense that Tarantino called him out so early in his career, because he's definitely an all-timer for tough guys, especially just seen from this movie. So, I mean, that coffee scene with Debbie is brutal. Like, that's the early 50s, which, obviously much more tame in terms of violence. This is not going to hold a candle to Dragged Across Concrete by any means, but for the 50s, the coffee scene is pretty rough.
I mean, if you think about it too, it's just so shocking, because as much as Gloria, like you said, she's not like evil. She's just trying to find her way too. She found herself entangled with the wrong people, and she's not innocent in that.
She's seduced by money. That's a large trait of her character.
Right.
And but she also kind of recognizes that, like, he probably could aspire to something more than just, hitching myself to like the money and where that comes from.
Especially as it escalates and she starts to see more and more danger, and how Lee Marvin is more and more of a live wire. I mean, every time somebody brings something up, even when the cop comes over and he's like, well, we can make this problem go away right now. Like, he's just constantly talking about murdering people. He's constantly saying like, I will do anything for us to get on top here. And that's the scary thing about him, is he's a live wire. So you don't know, like, he's shown you that, you don't know what to expect next. And that's very true as the movie goes on. Just like you just mentioned, the coffee. I mean, that's the biggest scene with him, where you're like, holy shit, he just did that. And he just did that to beautiful Gloria Grahame. Like, whoa. And then it like I'll just throw some money at it and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's like really, really lack of care or concern for anybody. And that's what makes these characters so scary to me.
I mean, I love the scene. So they're at the bar, and he roughs up some random girl, and Glenn Ford steps in, and Lee Marvin definitely just kind of scurries with his tail between his legs, because he doesn't want to challenge Glenn Ford in that scene right then, and so he just walks over to the girl, like he cut her hand or something like that. He gives her some money. He's like, "Oh, no hard feelings, doll," and then he just like scurries out of the bar. It's just very telling. It's like he's like a tough guy, but he's also kind of a pussy. But then he's maybe just kind of playing that because he knows eventually he's gonna like do something more extreme, like maybe go after Bannion's daughter, which they eventually do. So
I think that's more likely. I think he's more calculated than that. I think he knows I'm gonna cool it out here. This isn't the place, but.
So he's smart enough to not make a scene in that like moment, because obviously, that's a trait of like a psychopath, is you can't, if somebody embarrasses you or something, like you're going to explode at that moment. And again, that's just like, it doesn't really like, it's not the driving force of why you're watching the scene. It adds to the plot, but it's more about like how the characters are reacting to everything that's going on, and you just spend time with them. And so that's why I could tell this is going to be one I'd love to revisit over the years.
Well, I love to hear that. Yeah, I know sometimes, these films, like you said, they can be a little convoluted. They can be a little hard to follow the story. Well,
just thrillers in general can be solely focused on the plot and nothing else, which doesn't add anything to like rewatching a movie years later, I don't think.
Yeah,
it's the characters that you actually want to spend time with. And then, like I said, just pre 70s movies just felt different. They were just more focused on the plot, for one, less on the character, and still kind of finding their way with a lot of movies, especially in the noir genre. That was certainly one of the most innovative in early Hollywood. So.
I mean, and again, thinking about like the world at the time, right? As I always mention, what was it like in 1953? I mean, we're talking about post-war booming. The world was actually pretty nice at that point. And a lot of people were successful and happy that, we're not in war. So having a film come out like this, that's so kind of like brutal at times, is it must have been shocking for audiences to see.
Glenn Ford.
Your new favorite actor.
He's one of my new favorites of the old school Hollywood. Was Human Desire the movie that you were referring to earlier?
Maybe not. No.
Because I watched the quick thing. That's another Fritz Lang movie with Glenn Ford and Gloria Grahame. And I think it was a couple years before this, I think. But I saw it. I've not seen that. I'm not familiar with it, but
I just can't remember the title. It could be. Glenn Ford kind of plays like this, like
was Gloria Grahame too?
And Glenn Ford plays this kind of like he's on the railroad somehow. I only saw it once, but again, I'm sure somebody out there is listening to this and like, you dummies, it's this. Because the movie is fantastic, and the fact that I can't remember the name is kind of stupid. But yeah,
Human Desire, 1954. So it's actually after Big Feet. A Korean War vet returns to his job as a railroad engineer.
Okay, that's it.
Involved in an affair with a coworker's wife following the murder on a train.
That's a fantastic film, and you'd love it. And it's Gloria Grahame is like, sensational in it.
So that's Fritz Lang as well. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, Fritz Lang is obviously one of your favorites of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure the audience has been picking up on that.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, think about it. We watched Metropolis. What a different movie than, fast forwarding to the 50s here. Wow. What a career.
So I was talking to a coworker, and he actually was mentioning a later version of Metropolis that I have not seen. Maybe you're familiar with it. It's like an edited version with music added into it. It was something that, does it sound familiar?
So from what I've read, just from the Criterion
modern
edition,
music, I should say.
Yeah, from the Criterion edition, I believe they had to find a bunch of like old cut scenes. So when it came out, I think it was very controversial, and then also too long. So they had cut it up. So the original like theatrical version was never seen. Like again, pretty soon after it aired, they got rid of like a lot of the movie. And so the version you see on Criterion today is actually the version with all of the, wherever they could find the old reels, they put in the film that was cut. So I don't know, somewhere in there, they did score it with like a new modern score. And I know like it's been shown, just like, we talk about going to see a movie with like an orchestra and stuff like that. But I'm sure there's been multiple versions of that. I don't think there's one that was actually like, definitive. Like I guess the one that's on the Metropolis that's on Criterion now is like the one that's trying to be as close to like Fritz Lang's original vision.
I think he was mentioning something about with like modern music, like the band Queen. This is like a completely different version of a movie. Like
I don't know about that.
That doesn't sound familiar. Okay,
No.
so I got to check this out then. I mean, he was mentioning there's a different version with like modern bands scoring it, and so it sounded really cool. And like I said, like we were loving Metropolis when we watched the original versions. I'm definitely be interested in checking those new ones out. But
yeah.
Fritz Lang, like you mentioned, we watched. Obviously, you love Human Desire, but then, so yeah, Glenn Ford in both of these, like he really has become like one of my favorite like old school actors. Like his physicality, he was the best puncher for actors back then. He's so good at punching people in the several movies that I've seen him in.
Yeah, terrific.
Like this and 310 to Yuma. He had such a cool physicality while being like an everyman in the best possible way.
It's like the thing about like a lot of these actors going into like Westerns and stuff is because like where else do you go from the film noir? Like when you're punching your way through the scenes, it's like you got to be a rough and tough kind of tumble guy going to Westerns.
He's just a duster. Oh, I was thinking, I haven't seen it for a minute, but Hobie Doyle in the Coen Brothers movie. Just gave it my name.
Wait, that's Glenn Ford?
No. I'm just
gotcha.
like the old school Western actor. Why am I forgetting the name of the Coen Brothers movie about the old Hollywood?
Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar.
Yeah.
Hobie Doyle is one of my favorite Coen Brother characters of all time. Him just being like a duster, as they call him, a Western movie actor. He just represents the simplicity of some of the actors that got pushed into that.
Oh man, that's awesome. There's a place over here in LA. I just kind of heard about this there, and I always see it. It's got like an old school kind of like wagon trail, and it's called Gower Gulch. And I was kind of like, oh, Gower Gulch, just like a little shopping center or whatever. From what I've read, that's where a lot of old actors used to hang out, and they would get picked up for like Westerns and stuff like that. So they called it Gower Gulch. Like a bunch of people would just like hang out. It's kind of cool.
I'm going to go hang out there with my cowboy hat on this weekend.
You would be perfect with that beard. I mean, for sure. Look no further than Patrick McIntyre, Hollywood, whenever you start working and hiring actors again.
That's my laziness, just letting the beard flow out. It's crazy. It's getting ready for a trim. Man, this past week, having a beard is great, but man, not when it's 115 degrees out.
Yeah, but it's cooled down since. Yeah, it's like, what is it in Chicago now?
It's beautiful. It was like 70 yesterday. Went out walking and hiking all day, actually. So
well, it's like 97 today here in LA. I think maybe this is going to be the last week of it, but it's been hot. That's why that hurricane I mentioned at the top was kind of a nice reprieve for everybody. It was like, finally I could turn my air conditioner off.
Oof. So cool. All right. There was a line referring to Glenn Ford's character that was pretty telling that I wrote down. You're on a hate binge. You can't set yourself against the world and get away with it. And I feel like that kind of really sums up like what the motivation of the character was and what he was doing and the whole time. And him really kind of grappling with himself with his actions, but again, not necessarily thinking everything through and seeing the harm that it was doing to other people.
Yeah, that's sums it up right there with what we were talking about with what Ebert had mentioned in his review of the film. Yeah, I don't know. This film definitely resonates. Like I said, it kind of expands and spans time to be kind of current feeling. And also just the idea of going up against, like, let's set aside like whether it's right or wrong or whether you're harming other people by doing it, but the sheer ability to look at something that's wrong and without a care in the world go head first into that what's right, what you feel is right. You know, like, again, he didn't really question anything. He just is like, this is wrong and here I go. But these days a lot of people don't even do that. You know, a lot of people are afraid of these things, to stand up to anything. And I think this is why it's going to be age old through history. When things are wrong in the world, and it seems like there's a superpower in front of you, what do? Do you just cower and accept it, or do you go against it? And that's, I think, the thing that audiences loved about Glenn Ford's character is that, yeah, there's some casualties of war here, but you want to see him go and get the bad guy. Prevail.
Yeah, you want to see him stand up for what's right. But then, yeah, like power is not that simple,
no.
As you mentioned in the real world and in the movies. And again, why this is would probably be a perennial story. For sure.
I mean, I think this is a nice, perfect package for this film. I mean, obviously you loved it. I loved it too. I feel like audience or people listening to our podcast need to go out and just watch this film. There's not really much else to say other than like wonderfully directed by Fritz Lang, great story, and easy to follow with great characters and great character development. If you like film noirs, this is pretty much one of the cream of the crops in my opinion, and it'll lead you into getting excited about more film noirs and more films in that genre. I really don't have too much else to say about the film other than I'm glad you really liked it.
I mean, do you think it's still popular today? Like how many, like, do you think it's one that's pretty well known? I mean, it is amongst noir, but like a casual moviegoer, it feels like maybe just a little bit more familiar with it, not necessarily seen it.
Well, I suppose we'll see about when I look at the statistics of our podcast and see how many people actually wanted to listen to this episode. Sometimes
that's true. I feel like sometimes that's a gauge, but not always. Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Right.
It's a good question, but it's hard to say. I feel like I've talked about in the past, like if there's not people like us or other podcasts or other people, like this is on the film register that was for preservation, I believe. And it's a important enough film in the history of film that, you know, artists and historians want to protect it. So I know that is a good thing, you know, for a film like this. But whether or not like the audiences are remembering these films, that's why we're doing this, because I don't know. Like we talked about in the Elvis episode we did, like would people remember Elvis if people weren't continually like pushing his brand and making sure people knew about him?
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it's largely the dialogue and the tone that is indelible on our the vibe that it gives. Like the Bannion being the detective going in and talking, interrogating people. It's like that's such a common trope that was like immortalized with movies like this, but maybe necessarily the movie itself isn't always remembered. So I'm watching it, and I immediately thought of Leslie Nielsen and The Naked Gun.
So I
Googled the bribe scene. It's in the first movie. He's interrogating a guy on the dock right after Norberg is murdered, and it's the one where he's like trying to get information from him. They keep on passing money back and forth, and it's just watching that scene and just the vibe of the two of them, Drebin interrogating the guy. It was almost like an imprint from The Big Heat. It's like the scenes are 10 times funnier now that like I've seen The Big Heat, and obviously I've seen movies similar to it and the vibe from it and what the Naked Gun and Leslie Nielsen was going for that, but like putting it back like side by side, it makes it 10 times funnier.
Well, and that's the thing is like, you know, to be able to do a comedy like those that are pulling from like a film genre that is so specific, like it's got all of those things, these great like quip like lines and all those things, but to be able to do the comedy like that in a way that is just perfect that's an art in itself, and that's why we love Leslie Nielsen. Right. That's why we're talking about Leslie Nielsen all the time.
Oh, the best. Yeah, I mean, so my closing thoughts, obviously loved it. I'm going to definitely check out more of Gloria Grahame now because she is fantastic in this movie. But I did watch a little thing from Fritz Lang on the Criterion channel. This is currently on the Criterion streaming channel. And he had a quote, quick line at the end of one of his little short essays. And he was talking about like how to end movies and just the idea of filmmaking in general. And the quote is, "Everything is permitted except to bore your audience." And that's just his take on filmmaking. And it's never been so perfectly put. And just like what I've talked about before, is like, it so perfectly captures how I feel about film. It's like, there is no good, there's no bad. It's not necessarily high art or low art. There's just entertainment, and being boring is the worst thing a movie can be. And so it's just, I loved hearing him have that quote, and it so makes sense in terms of his filmography, but then also just his thoughts on what film should be also.
Yeah, that's great. And actually doing this podcast has helped me to kind of loosen up my nose in the air cinephile a little bit, you know, because like for some reason, just like anything in life, you kind of like think, oh, that's the way you're supposed to be if you're like a film fanatic. Like you're supposed to know everything, supposed to be a know-it-all about every film from every genre, from every, you know, and it's really it's just like, are you a fan of the movies and why do you like them? You have a different like take on a lot of different movies that I wouldn't have like given a second look at. But then when we watch them and we discuss them, I'm like, wow, that's one that I shouldn't have turned my nose at, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, everybody knows I love all film, but obviously I have a huge soft spot for horror in the sci-fi genre. But those are the movies that just age the best because they're more about the aesthetics, and they are largely the conduits to like shit that you couldn't really talk about or make movies about back in the day. And so you just had to be like more nuanced with a lot of the stories. And there's just so much to it that just ages well, which is another reason why like film criticism is always something to take with a grain of salt. It's like when you look back at like what people talk about movies, 50, 60 years ago, often wrong, often missing stuff, and movies just continually prove themselves if they're of value over the years, and we just gain more credibility.
Well, to segue, so thank you guys, everyone out there, for listening to our conversation on The Big Heat. This is the moment when Pat and I turn it over and talk a little bit about our lives and what we're consuming and, you know, what we're enjoying. So we like to discuss a little bit of that at the end. And I just wanted to bring this up because I meant to talk to Pat about this on the phone. We talked briefly the other day when, of course, my schedule was chaotic and we couldn't do the episode on the date that we wanted to. And then Pat calls me the next day and he's like, oh, you know what? My internet's out. So we had to juggle around a little bit. But the one thing missing in those conversations was that I have got back on the Mission Impossible train.
Oh,
yeah. And I know that you're going to like this. So look, I'm into it. I fucking love Tom Cruise. You know, I do. I have such a newfound respect. And that's another thing I think I've learned from you a little bit is to like not judge people so much for like what you hear in the tabloids or what you hear of their personal life. Like, are they making awesome art? Yeah. Tom Cruise is making kick-ass art. And I just love everything he's doing in those films. Now, talking again, does it need like, they're exciting because like these action scenes in these films are awesome. They're kick ass. There's no one can deny it. The problem with the films for me is like they are convoluted. The story sucks usually, you know.
They definitely. It's the same story. Every movie is about Tom Cruise going rogue, even though they finally name one of those, like I think Rogue Nation. Every movie is the exact same thing. It's like he gets fucked over by the IMF or whoever who's in charge, and he's got to go solo. That's the same plot of every single movie.
But he's got his nice cast of characters he can call on, exactly. You know, his tried and true. And so again, you know, that's fine because it is what it is. And when you know that, it's like, okay, you're signing up. Like we just watched, I think we're almost finished with the one before the one that's in theaters, which is, I think, Rogue Nation, right? 2018.
That's Fallout with Henry Cavill, which that's my number one, I think. So, dude,
that scene in the bathroom. Okay, so but we're not finished with it yet.
That's the loading of Henry Cavill's arms. It looks like he's loading his arms to get ready for punching, like he's loading guns or something.
Oh shit! I have to watch that again. But that's
a famous gif. You'll definitely recognize it. It just looks like he's loading guns, but he's just getting his fists ready to get punching. So yeah. Oh man, Cavill is so perfect in that movie. I love
it's such an interesting pairing too between the two of them. You know. Yeah. But then anyway. The one before that is the one in Dubai, and he's like running down the fucking skyscraper. And my girlfriend was like literally like had to leave the room. She was just like so blown away. She's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Like we just were loving it, you know. So yeah, I'm back on the train. Do I think that the movies are great as far as story and stuff? Not a chance. Do I think they're amazing because of what Tom Cruise is doing? Yes, and they're so worth watching. Just like a full on marathon. What could be more fun? You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you say it because, like you said, you had never seen any of them before a couple weeks ago, right? Yeah. No. So, I mean, I've seen. Did I see the original? I'm pretty sure I saw. I may have missed the first one from theaters, but I've seen 2 and all the subsequent ones in theaters as they came out. So it's like I've watched all these movies like growing up. So it's like having that revisit those characters. I guess it's just a little different than if you're like binging all 6 of them over the course of a couple of weeks. You kind of have a different vibe from it. Because if I was doing the same thing, I'd be like, this is the same movie each time, and the plot doesn't make sense for any of them. So, but again, it's like it's a hangout franchise. Like we're saying, it's like you're just hanging out with these characters. You're always reliable to see Tom Cruise, and Ving Rhames got his back each time. So,
and Simon Pegg as well. Let's just be honest here and say this. And the one spoiler I'll give away: Tom Cruise doesn't age in the entire film trajectory. I mean, that guy, like you said before, he's an alien. I don't understand it.
It's that Scientology, man. Maybe there's something to it.
I know.
There's a lot to make fun of it, but I don't know. He keeps on. His entire life is that kind of proof for it. So maybe.
Well, look. Regardless of what you feel about Scientology, you could just watch those films and think like, well, maybe I should join Scientology.
Yeah, right.
If I could be like Tom Cruise, you know. Anyway, I digress because I'm not going to do that, and I don't suggest anybody do that. We don't talk about religion and politics here, really. So the one thing about the ending of this we do sometimes. But the one thing to end this though on Mission Impossible is it does everything that you want from art. We had great conversations about it, and that more and more is in my mind. Like, what is the value of art? What is the value of art? It's just like I go to a museum. I go and watch a great movie. I get to talk to a like-minded person or somebody who has a different feeling completely, and we get to have a great conversation in the human. That's such a human thing to do, and that is the value of art. And without it, if you don't have anything to talk about with that stuff, like how boring is life?
It's pretty fucking dull without it, I would say. Yeah. That would be my vote. You know, luckily I haven't experienced that, you know, so that's why I'm grateful for my life. But man, couldn't agree more. So
yeah.
Amen to Tom Cruise.
Moving on from what I've been watching. Have you been watching anything cool?
Okay, so I've been texting you all weekend about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I got into rewatching some of the movies because I started playing. So I'm not a huge gamer, play sometimes, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the game, came out last weekend. and it's an asymmetrical horror game. It's kind of similar to the Friday the 13th that came out 5-10 years ago, and it's fucking fantastic. I played it on PlayStation 4. I haven't upgraded to PlayStation 5 again. I played too much, but this game is fucking crazy good. Like, I haven't played a video game this much probably since I was like 13 or 14.
Wow.
I'm sure I'm not going to keep it going. It's just been a week of checking out, but like, it's largely because of how much I love those movies. I mean, the original I watched when I was 12 or 13. It's like a pivotal. I remember seeing it for the first time. I could tell you all the details of that afternoon because it like just hit me at a young age, like so hard. Like, this is the craziest fucking movie I've seen in my life at that time. And I've loved it ever since. I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 with Dennis Hopper, an absolute 80s classic. And so those movies have always been very special to me. So I was pretty excited to play the game, like more as like a fan of the movie. And it's fantastic. I mean, you definitely don't have to play it if you're not a gamer. Maybe just check out the YouTube video, kind of get a vibe of it. Because again, if you like the movies, the game is so faithful to the movies. It's so it's essentially, it's all online. You have 7 people. You're playing with other real people online. It's not like AI or anything. And you're either a victim or one of the family members who are hunting the victim. So it's a 3 versus 4 match, and you're either trying to survive as a victim or just murder the victims as the family. So it's pretty on point with like the vibe of all the movies, and down to so many details they pull from the entire franchise. It's highly recommended if you love those movies, but something very cool to check out if maybe just on YouTube if you're interested in what they did with that. And it's the asymmetrical vibe. Like I said, they made a Friday the 13th game like this 10 years ago, and I believe they're going to be doing one with Killer Klowns from Outer Space in the next couple of years. So that might be the one that gets you into the gaming world.
Yeah, I don't game, but I'll tell you what, like I went to Universal Horror Nights for the first time last year, and they had the Killer Klowns exhibit and or whatever the horror haunted house. And my girlfriend had never even seen that film. She doesn't like horror, so like it's tough for me because I love this shit, just like you do. Like I'm geeking out here, and you talk about the game, and yeah, I would probably pick up a PlayStation just for that. I've never had a PlayStation in my life, but that sounds awesome. And then also like Killer Klowns, just going in that haunted house, they were so faithful to every little detail. Like you'd walk through the cotton candy, and all that stuff, and then like they'd shoot you with the water guns, and you go into the room, and it's got like Mooney with like the hand behind him, and he's like the dummy dude. Like the actors too, it's so great out here because everybody is so they're all actors. It's all on point. So yeah. I love that. I love that there's a Killer Klowns game. I think recently the licenses came up or something, so they've been doing a lot more with it.
It might be. I mean, I know the Kyoto brothers, the directors of that movie, the special effects guys. They did so many special effects movies, special effects 4 movies that we grew up on, but they directed Killer Klowns from Outer Space. I know they've mentioned rights issues as a reason why there's never been a sequel or anything to Killer Klowns from Outer Space, which I don't know. Like I'm fine with it just being its special thing and never being, we love franchises here, obviously, like the Halloweens and the Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacres. I love franchise, but like, I'm okay with it just being a thing, a single movie that is just set in stone and not tainted by any other sequels or anything. So
it's such a great movie. I mean, everybody out here listening to this that likes anything horror knows that movie is special. And so I agree with you. However, I wouldn't not see a second Killer Klowns movie if it did come out. That's
why I'm on the fence. I mean, I don't need it, but I would be there first day for it. Okay, but yeah, back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So yeah, I was revisiting some of the. I'd never seen 3. That's the one with Viggo Mortensen, and he's
neither have I.
He's pretty fucking badass in that. That one's an okay movie. And then 4 with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. I remember seeing that. I remember seeing that one on HBO as a kid before the McConaughey was a big name, and that one's a pretty rough one to watch too. I mean, that's the thing about this franchise. It's like. There's a lot of good movies, but they're not. They're mean fucking movies. Like a Friday the 13th or Halloween. Those are like, you can watch those and they're kind of like fun to rewatch, and because they have a certain vibe and they're kind of like enjoyable. They have characters and a score that's like, enjoyable. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, since the beginning, it's like that was the entire point of the first one. Is like it's a mean, dirty, sweaty, hot, uncomfortable movie to watch. And that's the thing about, they've made 9 movies. I think I mentioned 8, but there's actually been 9 of them. And that they keep on trying to do that, which works, but it doesn't necessarily mean you want to keep on rewatching them because they're so fucking dirty.
House of Thousand Corpses kind of follows that a little bit,
Yeah, exactly.
And, that's you're right. Like, let's say that, you're going to dip your toe into horror, or whatever. Like, let's say my girlfriend, who doesn't watch any horror stuff, like, okay, I'll watch like something. I would never show her Texas Chainsaw Massacre to start because that movie would for sure scar her for life. It's so fucked up.
Right. I mean, again, like I still remember hearing the score, like those just like the metal grinding at the opening of that movie after the monologue, and like just the weird metallic vibes in the score. Like it's just so indelible. And again, it's awesome, but it's not necessarily being like, oh, I'm excited to watch this movie now. It's just more, it's so off-putting, which is why it's great. But like I said, it's not necessarily like something you want to keep on revisiting and watching all the time. So
totally. Well, cool. That's great. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the game, got to check that out. Anything else cool? Or are we getting on to our music picks of the week?
What have I seen lately? I'll go through. I got a couple things to go. I saw Old Boy for the first time in theaters. Park Chan-wook's movie from 2003. I'd actually never seen it before.
Neither have I.
Okay, yeah, the 2003 movie, the revenge movie. Same year as Kill Bill, kind of a similar vibe, and I think that's why it's at least partly why it's been like a cult classic ever since.
Or fell under the radar just because that movie was, Kill Bills were so big at the time.
It was also, being a foreign film, it doesn't get as front billing as it would something like Kill Bill. We went to go see Jurassic Park this past weekend. They released it in theaters for the 30th anniversary. Nothing new there other than just one of the best movie-going experiences of my life and most people our age. So great nostalgia pick to always see that in the theater.
Where are you seeing those at? Alamo Drafthouse or Music Box?
Neither. The Jurassic Park does just I saw that at the AMC, which is not always my first pick, but I'll go there for an old school viewing like that.
Hold on to your butts.
God, Jackson's so good at that. I mentioned Talk to Me. I think last episode.
Yeah, you did. A24. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so great. I'm excited to see it again. I just saw a couple articles come out. Peter Jackson just came out swinging for it. He said it's one of the best horror movies that he's seen in years. And so
high praise for the man.
Exactly. When you can take my recommendations with a grain of salt, but if you get a horror recommendation from Peter Jackson, it's definitely one to check out. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we got to do the Frighteners at some point here real soon.
I mean, I've been crushing those Peter Jackson commentaries, and I haven't. Now that I think about it, I wonder if he did one for Frighteners. I'm gonna have to look at that.
I have the DVD, although it's in the attic in my brother's house, so I can't really check it.
We need to eventually figure that out because I would love to hear that commentary. And then the final thing, physical media corner. I picked up a couple movies entirely for commentary. I'm still on my commentary kick. First, we'll go with Frank Darabont's The Mist, which is a fucking amazing horror movie. Frank Darabont did Shawshank Redemption based on the Stephen King short story.
Also, a lot of people don't realize Big in the beginning of The Walking Dead was part of the reason that show was even created, but he kind of had a falling out and then was not part of that world for like the next few seasons after the first or second.
Oh, he didn't continue with it? I know he was one of the original creators, or show developers.
Yeah, there was like some sort of issue, and then he left originally.
Oh, yeah. So I'm excited to listen to that commentary with Frank Darabont. I got the classic Cobra.
Nice.
One of your favorites. And commentary by director George P. Cosmatos, who we were recently talking about as the father of, although his name's escaping me, the director of Mandy. So that family is crushing multiple decades with great movies. And then this one is related to William Friedkin, who we discussed, recently passed away, director of Exorcist and French Connection. This is a underappreciated one. We were actually just talking about Matthew McConaughey, Killer Joe. Have you ever seen this?
No.
2011. So it's from a Tracy Letts play. And this is one of the craziest movies I've ever seen. It's certainly the most insane Matthew McConaughey performance I've ever seen. Directed by William Friedkin, one of his last movies. And I can't recommend this movie enough. It's a kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a dirty movie about dirty fucking people. And so it's not necessarily like one you want to hang out with, but it is so out there. And I just can't recommend it enough. It is one of those movies that led to the McConaughey sons. It's like him doing these like smaller indie movies and like was having just awesome performances is what led to him being, you know, an A-list actor since then. So definitely excited for that commentary as well. So, and if you haven't seen Killer Joe, there is a scene, if you have seen it, you know the scene. There is a scene with Matthew McConaughey and Gina Gershon and a chicken leg. And that's all I'll say. But it's definitely one of the most insane scenes that's ever been put on film. So,
well, now I got to see it. I haven't seen it myself. Yeah, wow,
so good, love it.
I love that you're picking up some physical media again. Is there a place by you that is selling like used DVDs or something?
I mean, you know, in Chicago, there's plenty of independent ones. I mean, the Exchange is obviously like a chain one, but Record Breakers is still around in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
They're usually always my favorites. I mean, their music selection
and
is
movies,
even better. So, yeah. It's been, you know, pretty sparse. I feel like those have resurged kind of like independent bookstores ever since like
absolutely
the big box stores, big box bookstores don't really exist anymore. And that's kind of what led to more independent bookstores getting their due because people want to still go vibe with that. And it's kind of the same thing with movies and music. It's like they're not necessarily buying them all the time, but the used stores are, I would say, certainly thriving. Like every time I go into Record Breakers in Chicago, it's packed. And so people love going.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
How about you? What do you got? Anything new other than Big Heat you're loving?
No, yeah. I mean, basically, just enjoying my life and you know, doing as much art as possible. I do have something going on this week that was kind of unexpected, but I kind of anticipated it. Well, I knew I was going to be going to the show, so it'll run right into my music pick of the week. My friend Chris Mason is going to be in town with his band Ha Ha Tonka. Had you ever heard of Ha Ha Tonka before?
Oh, definitely familiar with the name.
Yeah. They've been around a while, and they're doing a new record. So my music pick of the week is going to be one of their new songs from their new record that's coming out in October. So they're on tour right now. And for anybody listening to this, they're coming through Los Angeles, and they're going to play at the, I always mess up the name because I haven't been there yet, but I'm so excited to go. It's called the House Cafe, I believe. Or I don't know if that's the one in Chicago or DeKalb or whatever, or if it's the one here or Hotel Cafe. Either way, that's where they're playing here in Los Angeles. And Chris is going to stay with me for the week that they're here, and he's coming in today. And I'm excited to see my old friend. He's drumming with them. So my music pick of the week is a song that they have called Blood Red Moon. And I really like the lyric. I've never been like super, not that I don't like their band. They're not super on my radar. They're kind of like a little Americana. So they were on that record label in Chicago called Bloodshot Records, which was kind of like punk rock, kind of like Americana songs and songwriters and stuff like that. I think their biggest claim to fame was Ryan Adams, got to start there. And Murder by Death was on that label too and stuff. So they're not on there anymore. It's more independent. So I really hope that everybody can go and support these guys. They're on tour right now doing what they're due. And they're a great live show. I've seen them a couple of times. Once at Fitzgerald's in Berwyn there. And they play there all the time. They do this thing called Tonksgiving. And I think they're going to do that again in November at Fitzgerald. So if you're in Chicago, you can go see them there. Right now, they're on tour. They're doing a bunch of West Coast dates, and they're playing Wednesday at that Hotel Cafe, whatever it's called. So the song Blood Red Moon, it's got this cool vibe about kind of like picking up with the person you love and starting new. And despite what everybody tells you, and I can really relate to that with having, 2 years ago, moved to LA with a lot stacked up against you. It's not easy to do that, but I think that this song kind of gives you that vibe, like we're going to do it. And I got you, you got me, and we're We got that one chance to follow our dreams. I love that line. It's in the song. So Blood Red Moon, Haha Tonka, check them out. If you're in LA, come see the show.
Hell yeah. Blood Red Moon, looks like it was just last year, 2022.
Yeah.
Are they, you said they're on tour currently? Are they coming through Chicago?
Yeah, so they played in Fullerton, California last night, and they're
Nice.
going to be here. I think just all over the West Coast. But the Chicago show, like I was saying, I think isn't until November when they play at that Fitzgerald's place. Yeah.
Yeah, Fitzgerald's. I actually just learned last time I watched League of Their Own that when they go to the Roadhouse in the middle of the movie, that's Fitzgerald's.
It's cool. It's cool because like when you're there, you like think about that. It's actually kind of nice, It's the same. They haven't changed that room at all.
Yeah. I just didn't realize that when growing up, but that's a great venue. Love it. All right, awesome. Love to hear Haha Tonka. Go check that out. All right, so I've been on a huge Merle Haggard kick.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And I could recommend tons of his songs, but I'm actually going to go with a song that somebody covers of Merle Haggard, and that is the Flying Burrito Brothers from 1969. "Sing Me Back Home," which is actually so the Flying Burrito Brothers. They had their album "The Gilded Palace of Sin" in 1969. It's like an alt country cornerstone for that vibe. I mean, just think of like if Wilco was making music in the 60s, that's exactly what the Flying Burrito Brothers were, and that's why they were so like innovative at the time. And so their cover, which I had never heard until recently on my Merle Haggard kick, it's the cover of Haggard's "Sing Me Back Home." It was recorded in 1969, I think, and it wasn't really released as a single anywhere until like a collection, like years later. So I think that's why I've never heard it. So where do you stand on the Flying Burrito Brothers? Have they ever been on your radar, or that album specifically?
Never. No.
Never. Okay. Yeah. So I feel like they've been held back from notoriety largely because of how ridiculous their name is. It's just, you hear the Flying Burrito Brothers, you're like, what the fuck kind of name is that? But again, like people who, I mean, their album, I think The Gilded Palace of Sin was like on Rolling Stone's like 500 best albums of all time when they originally released that years ago. So it's especially that album is, like I said, pivotal for like alt country, with like, Dylan, obviously, with Nashville Skyline, which is one of my favorite albums by him. I think that's 67. Just really the combination of alternative rock and country hadn't really, occurred before then. So there was like such a new sound at the time. And it's obviously a sound, like I said, with Wilco that's resonated ever since then. And so the "Sing Me Back Home," it just is the perfect encapsulation of their vibe, and then especially like with a songwriter like Merle Haggard, who I love. I actually just picked up this new biography I didn't realize was out. It's called Hag, and I've never read anything about his life, so I'm excited to pick that one up. It's supposed to be pretty good.
Oh yeah, he's got an interesting life for sure. That's got to be a really good read, I bet. I'm actually interested in that myself.
I'm excited for it. So yeah, I've been enjoying the country music a lot more lately. Felt like it was time to put a little bit more of that on the playlist. So "Sing Me Back Home."
Flying Burrito Brothers.
The Flying Burrito Brothers. I'm telling you, man, great fucking album, despite the name. So
cool. I mean, I actually love the name, of course.
Yeah, I think it's just like. I feel like it's just a name in conversation that it's easy to dismiss. You're like, this sounds like a throwaway band or whatnot. Sure. Also, listening, the Hives have a new album out. Just want to throw out.
I've heard. I haven't listened to any of it, but I've gotten like a ton of people being like, "Dude, have you heard the new Hives stuff?" I hear it's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, the Hives. I've loved them ever since the garage rock revival. It was just in the heyday. I was in high school, when the Strokes and White Stripes and the Hives all started playing music. So it's like pretty special vibe ever since my youth. And the Hives have always been. They weren't necessarily as popular as the Strokes or the White Stripes, but they've definitely maintained. I mean, what's unique about like this new album? It's called "The Death of Randy Fitzsimmons." I mean, it legit sounds like their first album, and I mean that in like the best possible way. It's like they've maintained their sound which some people will say is a criticism of a band. You know, if you sound the exact same 25 years later, not everybody's into that. But for a band like the Hives, I think that's exactly what they should be doing. I think they're on record as saying, like, that's what we want to be doing, is maintaining that coked out punk inspired garage rock vibe that I fucking love.
I mean, the Ramones did it their entire career.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You know, so, and yeah, I love all their albums. I just re-listened to Lex Hives and Tyrannosaurus Hives. Both of those are fantastic. And I've given this one 2 listens through. It's awesome. You know, like I said, you know, if you know the sound of the Hives, it's going to sound familiar on this new album, which is incredibly comforting when it's a band you love. So,
oh, great. Yeah, I have to check that out. You're I think the 3rd person that's told me, like, yo, you're going to love this shit. So yeah, really cool.
Yeah. I have not seen them in concert since 2004, and they're playing here in November. So I'm definitely at a smaller place at the bottom lounge. So
that's going to sell out, dude. You better get the tickets to that.
It's already sold out. So yeah. I'll have to get a secondhand ticket, but I caught him at Riot Fest maybe 6-7 years ago, but it wasn't up close, but it'll be fun to see him at like a smaller venue again. Cause I saw him, I'm pretty sure it was the Metro in 2004, and definitely their live performance. If you've ever seen them, you know how energized, energy filled it is. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. I think if there's nothing else to add to this episode, I think we've really had a great conversation about a lot of things, but of course about the movie we covered today, The Big Heat. And I really encourage everybody who's out there to go and check out the Remainders playlist that has all of our music picks of the week. Patrick has been great about curating that, and it's on Spotify. And then if you are listening to this on your podcast, Podchaser of choice, know that you can also see us. And we have all of our episodes on YouTube, or you can go to remainderspod.com, follow us on the socials. Please interact with us and let us know what you think. Lately, it's been kind of picking up a little bit, and then we've gotten a few people talking about certain movies that they've liked, and I really enjoy that. I know you do too. It's nice to see that people are listening and wanting to talk about movies. That's the thing that's so great about working in a movie store back in the day, and we missed that. You know, we used to have our regulars that would come in and talk to us all day long. We'd get nothing done, and it was fantastic.
I mean, that was the job. So I felt like we got lots done doing that. So
yeah. So until we can one day open up our own movie store together, we get here every 2 weeks and talk to movies. So appreciate you being here with us, everybody. Pat, next time, I know we've already got our movie picked out, and we're inching our way to our big number 50th episode, which will be, it's no surprise, RoboCop. So we're getting there. We got a few more to go.
50 episodes, man. It's been a wild ride. Loving every minute of it. Fantastic.
Me too. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Pat, see you in 2 weeks.
See you, bud.
Bye-bye.